So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining our food recovery committee call, kind of the year-end call for the AFDO Food Recovery Committee. Philip and I both welcome everyone. Do we have anybody on the call that it's their first time attending?
Yeah.
Yes, it's my first time attending. I'm Jeffrey Clark with the National Restaurant Association.
Great. Welcome, Jeff.
I'm Christine Fiero with Public Supermarkets. I'm standing in for Michael Robertson.
Okay, great. Welcome, Christine.
And I'm Janine Reese from Colorado State University Public Health. So our first time.
Welcome. Welcome, Janine.
And I'm Emily Hobus, assistant teaching professor at University of Washington.
Great. Welcome, Emily.
Charles Sumenko, Nebraska Department of Agriculture.
Hi, I'm Maria from Worcester Community Fridges.
Hi, Maria. No, Maria, Julia will be joining later, right? At 12:30 Eastern.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll do the presentation at 12:30 together.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I think that's, so we do have some new attendees to the committee, which is great. So that helps me because we can kind of frame this for some of the new folks on the call today. As far as our agenda today, we just wanted to have some really welcome everybody and then have some kind of a review of the charges. We do have 5 charges, so we're going to be talking about those and reviewing those today, and kind of discussing those and which ones we've kind of we think we have completed, and then which ones that will may continue on into the next year. And we do have I did line up 2 guest speakers. Maria, who just spoke from Woo Fridge, she'll be talking about community fridges today, which is in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. She'll give in the background and how those are operated. And then Julia, her partner that also helps operate that, the Woo Fridge organization, will also be presenting with her. That will be kind of the last half hour. So approximately 12:30 Eastern. So that'll probably take up that last half an hour of the call today. And then Sean Michael, I think I saw you on the call. I know you were going to speak as well. So I was planning on having maybe you present on what you learned. I know Sean Michael had done some research on community fridges with the city of Boston. So I think he put together a short presentation on that as well. So I was going to have you speak maybe, probably 12:15 or so.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great. Let's see. So also wanted to then we'll just basically kind of, what we're going to do is start off on the charges. So let me see, I share my screen here. Hold on one second. Okay, I think, can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So this is just outlining the charges for the Food Recovery Committee. Most of you who have been on the calls previous have been actively kind of working on these charges. For those of you that are new to the call, this is kind of the charges that AFTO. Actually, wait a second. This was actually the screen that you see right now. I'm actually going to back up one slide here. So for those of you new to the committee, this is just a quick overview of our committee, which was previously an ad hoc committee, but then became a standing committee. I think it was back in 2018 or 2019, I believe, yes. And we actually do have more than 31 members now, and it is open to anyone. So be happy to have more people join and participate in our committee. These were actually the charges from the previous year. So just to kind of recap some of the things that we've done, we did produce a poster size guide that depicts canned and flexible packaged food defects. There was existing, kind of posters out there, but really what we needed to do and identified what we did was update those photos and update the kind of the poster just to make it a little bit more user friendly, easier to see those defects. A lot of the photos were very old, so we accomplished that last year. We also worked with the Food Recovery Committee through CFP, which I was also involved at that. And that was just making sure that we're not working on the same projects. So that was fairly easy charge. And we also got into researching the issue of date labeling as a barrier to food donation, also tracking legislative activities related to date labeling of food, and identifying potential solutions to the barrier, which that phrase right there is a difficult one, but we did our best on that one. And then we began discussions between charitable organizations and the regulatory arena to identify areas where type 3 classified recalls, such as labeling concerns, quality concerns, could be relabeled by charitable organizations for eventual donations. And that leads us to the charges for this year. Charge 1 was to explore existing guidelines on little free pantries or community fridges. Charge 2 is analyze the need for food safety rules and regulations specific to food donation, and to consider if such regulations should be added to the FDA food code, which I think probably for most of you on the call now realize that actually did happen. And it wasn't obviously directly related to our committee, but it was directly related to the Food Recovery Committee through the Conference for Food Protection. Charge 3 had to do with, again, researching more on date labeling. That was that one was carried over from the previous year. And it's a rather complex issue that we'll discuss in a moment. Charge 4, beginning discussions, again, has to do with, that was a carried over as well between the type 3 class recalls, labeling concerns, and product withdrawals, where those types of products could be potentially, relabeled or saved from going to landfill when it's not a food safety concern. Charge 5 was to create an explanatory document for charitable organizations and the regulatory arena, including federal regulatory guidance regarding this practice. So that's kind of the overview of the charges. I do have another slide here just to show the package can and food defects poster. This is available through the AFTO website. I believe it's under the resource section. So if you haven't seen this before, please do check it out. And I think we also have a committee portal that it's also posted in the portal under our resource files in our portal. Okay, so we'll start off. We are going to have a presentation later today by Maria and Julia from Woo Fridge to talk about community fridges in particular. Charge 1 has to do with obviously exploring the existing guidelines. So really what we were doing here was looking for guidelines that may be out there, both either from organizations that operate free pantries or community fridges. Really what we did was we tried to identify how many networks of free pantries and community fridges are out there across the country. So we did create a kind of a spreadsheet of the research that we did. We broke out into a subcommittee on this charge. Forget how many people we had on it, but we all kind of split up different parts of the country and did some research in this area. And then look to see if, the organization or the pantry or community fridge did have any type of guidelines that they posted on their website. And then we also did look too to see if there were any existing public health guidelines on free pantries or community fridges. And we know that there are a few out there, for one in particular on little free pantries in the state of Washington. Community fridges, there was minimal. There were some guidance documents. I think we actually found something, a document that's from the UK on this, which was rather helpful. Some more, we also found Harvard Food Policy and Law Clinic actually has a document that they put together kind of talking about the legalities of free pantries and community fridges. But we didn't find a lot of public health guidance. I know there are some health departments that, and that doesn't mean that they don't exist. It's just what we found. I know there are some health departments that may be looking to create some sort of guidance. So that's that. So there very well could be additional guidance, forthcoming that we would eventually find out about. I think we looked at, let's see, I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet here. I think we found approximately and this is primarily on community fridges, I think we found about 36 different community fridge networks across the country. Some of them might have been a resource for the entire country, but then most of the other ones were different metropolitan areas or different states that they operated in. And we do have a spreadsheet that we did put together and it is available. We do have it posted, I believe, in our portal with the various website address for these community fridges and or free pantries. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions on charge one, or we will be talking a little bit more towards the end of the call on this one. So I was gonna kind of wait to talk more on that until we get to that portion when Sean, Michael, and then Maria and Julia will present on community fridges. Okay, we'll move on to charge two. Charge two has, again, is analyzing food safety rules and regulations. Now, Philip, I believe a survey just recently went out on charge two, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I had initially wanted sent it to go out around the 1st of April. For whatever reason, it didn't get sent out, and I realized that I was super busy the month of April and didn't touch bases with Steve, but it did go out. So hopefully we will have the results maybe by the time we have the in-person meeting next month, but we will have those to analyze at that time, the industry questions that we sent out to industry. I think we sent it to, 100 and something industry representatives through AFTO, and then I know we forwarded on to a couple of industry
Associations.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Mhm.
So I don't know how much further it would get sent out to people. So hopefully it get out more widespread.
Okay.
But that's where we're at. That's where we're at with the survey.
Okay. And that survey, when again, you said it went out to just industry membership
Correct.
and those external, maybe partners or associations that we know.
right.
Okay.
Correct.
And I believe Steve is managing kind of that survey, correct? And then he
Yes.
probably has the access to gain all the data back from that survey.
Correct.
Okay, great. Well, charge two, I see charge two is definitely partially completed, since we do have food donation now in the FDA food code. Although there's not specific, it's very vague, obviously, in the FDA food code. There's not a lot of specifics around it, other than defining food donation, and then also just basically saying food can be donated, but it must be done so in accordance with all the rules and regulations in the FDA food code. So that's primarily what it says. And then we know that certain states across the country do have food donation in their state food code. It'll be interesting to see. I think there's maybe 4 states that automatically adopt the food code as soon as it's out. So then that would, in theory, mean that that they have started using the 2022 FDA food code. And then more states will likely adopt that 2022 version. I'd imagine in the coming years. So it'll be interesting to see if they add this section. That's the hope. And the hope is obviously to increase awareness for food donation, by now having it in the FDA food code. One update that I wanted to give to you is I was at the Food Safety Summit conference a couple weeks ago, and a lot of you probably remember Kevin Smith from the FDA, who was a part of this committee, and Kevin retired last year. I did meet his replacement, essentially. And let's see, her name is Priya. Last name is Kadam, and she is a senior advisor. And I know she's basically kind of assumed the role that Kevin had for, working on their food waste initiative, in collaboration, obviously, with the EPA and the USDA. So had a great conversation with Priya, and she seemed very, very eager to. I explained to her this committee and kind of what we're working on currently, and encouraged her to join. I did send her the information on this call, but I don't believe she's on. She had not responded as of this week, so I don't believe she joined, but hoping to get her involved. I think she'd be a valuable asset, especially when we get to talking in a little bit more about some of these bigger issues that are rather difficult, which is charge 4 and 5, essentially, when we're talking about recalls and federal guide, regulatory guidance. I see both USDA and FDA being a needed participant in that, if we are to create any type of kind of high level document that explains this. So more to come on that, but I'm excited that we now will have a little bit, hopefully we'll have a little bit more involvement with someone from FDA as part of the committee. As far as charge 2, kind of the update on that charge, there's been a lot of work done in this area, but I know recently there was, there is legislation that was reintroduced recently. I think I saw it written up in the Food Safety News. This is legislation that's been already introduced, but it was just might have been updated and reintroduced. And it's the I forget the name of it. If it's the food date labeling act or something to that effect, that has been reintroduced to hopefully we can get some Congress to maybe act on that eventually. This one is particularly, difficult. I just don't see this. We have industry involvement and voluntary you know, trying to get various associations and FDA and USDA to kind of all sign off on certain terms to use for date labeling, which will help. But I know there's been a big push to have this kind of really Congress to act and then direct the regulatory agency to better define and regulate this. Does anybody have anything they want to add on charge 3 or kind of your opinion on charge 3? We know this one's been a complex issue for over the years, and there's been work done. I know this is in my world at Feeding America, this is something we deal with almost on a daily basis somewhere. We have a lot of resources on this. Obviously, we have the the USDA and FMI, or I think it's FMI now, the Food Keeper, which is now an app. So we use that for date labeling. But we're constantly always getting the question on date labels on various types of products and how long, can they be extended? Can they not? If so, how long? Those types of things. So. I did have a quick, let's see, video that I was going to show on this issue. Some of you may have seen this before, but this was done. Can everyone see my screen here? So this video was done, put together by the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic by Emily Broad-Lieb, who you'll see in the video, and her team. So I know some of you may have worked with Emily. I have in the past. They've done a lot of work on this issue, and we use some of their guidance documents that they put together. So I think this video is about maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but I think it's worth watching just to talk about this issue a little bit.
Waste billions of pounds of good food. Much of this loss could be prevented if we reformed the flawed expiration date system. Because what do these dates actually mean anyway? The sell-by date is, I would interpret it as being that's time that you have to be done drinking. I'm actually just aware that I have no idea what the date even means. That date means the expiration date, so I don't get the line of milk trying to get milk straight. Really good to smell test. Turns out there's good reason to be confused. There's no federal law on expiration dates, so states have a dizzying variety of date label laws that aren't based in science or sound public policy. So a team of faculty and students interested in the laws regulating our food decided to investigate. We wanted to tell a small story to illustrate a larger problem with our expiration date system. Practices around dating of foods are just a complete mess. And anything that we can do to help consumers understand what dates mean and to use dates consistently, I think that's important. Milk is pasteurized, which means that it should not.
Wayne, I don't think the audio is coming through very well.
Oh, it's not? Okay. I apologize for that.
Yeah, if you click when you share, you'd have to reshare, but if you click optimize for video or something like that on the Zoom share window, then it will automatically share the audio also and clean out any bumps.
Okay. Hold on. All right, let me see if I can figure this out. I got it. All right, you want me to start it over again? or just leave?
I think it'd be good to start over.
Okay.
Yeah, keep in mind.
All right. Hopefully this will work better. Apologize.
One, two, 3, 4.
Sounds good.
Great.
Each year in the US, we waste billions of pounds of good food. And much of this loss could be prevented if we reformed our flawed expiration date system. Because what do these dates actually mean anyway?
A sell-by date is, I mean, I would interpret it as being that's the time that you have to be done drinking it.
I'm actually just aware that I have no idea what the date even means.
That date means the expiration date. So I go to the back of the line of milk and try to get the newest date.
No, I kind of give it the smell test.
Turns out there's good reason to be confused. There's no federal law on expiration dates, so states have a dizzying variety of date label laws that aren't based in science or sound public policy. So a team of faculty and students interested in the laws regulating our food decided to investigate. We wanted to tell a small story to illustrate a larger problem with our expiration date system.
The practices around dating of foods are just a complete mess. And anything that we can do to help consumers understand what dates mean and to use dates in a sensible way, I think that's a good thing. Milk is pasteurized, which means that it should not contain pathogenic bacteria like Salmonella or E. coli. So the risks from drinking spoiled milk are virtually zero.
Sorry.
Tastes okay. Could maybe on the edge of spoiling, but it tastes okay today at least.
Tastes fine.
Most of us thought that milk, well past its expiration date, tasted fine.
This one smells a little weird.
And we learned that spoiled milk, though it's totally gross,
Oh, definitely not good. Well,
won't make you sick.
definitely not good. Would not drink that one. Can I have some water?
Most states let the processor put the date on it, but regardless of how good it is, there's nothing on a jug that'll tell you how good the milk is.
Even though the date on milk isn't related to safety, Montana law prohibits it from being sold or donated more than 12 days after pasteurization.
The standard today is 21 to 24 days, and Montana's still living in 1980, and you're throwing it down the drain when it probably is good for 21 to 24 days. But the 12-day sell-by date tells the consumer nothing. It's just an arbitrary number somebody came up with no scientific backing whatsoever.
I hate wasting stuff that is not, there's nothing wrong with it. I have customers that, you know, they think that the sell-by date is a spoil-by date. And really, they should have another week on it. And it's very, very frustrating watching stuff go down the drain that could be going to a needy family. A sell-by date itself, we pour down the drain. We cannot donate it to the food bank, so we don't want anybody getting sick, supposedly.
Well, when it comes to food waste, the expression crying over spilled milk actually does apply. Following a study from Harvard, a film crew was in Missoula today to document how Montana's milk date process leads to a mass amount of waste every year.
We wanted to take a new angle on the issue. It's a huge problem. It's 160 billion pounds of food wasted every year. So focusing on this one example of this law with milk is a way to demonstrate that perfectly good, safe, wholesome food is being thrown out for no reason except that there's a law with an arbitrary date.
If it lasts 21 days and they're putting 14 or 12 days on it, then just think about the waste and think about what could have gone, you know, where that milk could have gone to help.
I think they certainly should be able to donate it and sell it also. I don't see where there should be a difference there.
Each year, 40% of food produced in the US goes to waste. Our system of senseless and conflicting state laws must go. We need a federal law that standardizes expiration dates across products. It should require labels that are clear to consumers, and it should only allow restrictions that are science-based. It's time to change the way we label our food.
Okay, has anyone seen that before?
No, but it was a great video. I think a lot of people are going to be sharing it with their organizations. I know I will.
Yeah, I can actually put the link in the chat too if you need it. It's on oh boy, how do I get on here? There we go. Yeah, this video was it's about 7 years old, believe it or not. And they specifically went to Montana because Montana is the most restrictive state for milk, regulating the dates on milk, and obviously not all states regulate these dates, but some do. Montana happens to be the most extreme in how it's worded in their state regulation, which prohibits donation. There's many states that have regulation on the sale past you can't sell it past the date, but it doesn't necessarily always restrict donation. This one actually does restrict donating as well. I just put the link in the chat. If anybody wants to rewatch that or see that in the future. Let's see. So share my screen again really quick. And then this is the legislation I was referring to earlier in the article in the Food Safety News. It's the Food Date Labeling Act, which has been introduced. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill that was recently reintroduced into Congress that's looking to standardize and clarify food date labeling across the country. So there's I'll put the link in the chat for this one too. Some of you may be aware of this. But that's essentially what's kind of the most up to date on this issue of moving forward to try to standardize date labeling. Okay, so now I think we'll move on to charge 4 and charge 5. Those are two charges that kind of go hand in hand. I think we haven't completed probably either one of these charges, but we will continue to be working on these. These seem to be the most complex. We might need to reword, in my opinion, we might need to reword charge 5 slightly. Charge 4, it basically just talks about the beginning of the discussion between charitable organizations. And really what we're talking about here was the type 3 recall, which is a non-food safety issue recall. So it might be a product that could be misbranded or mislabeled or missing an ingredient, or a lot of times it's concerning a labeling error. I was planning on having somebody in our supply chain team at Feeding America on the call to speak on this, but unfortunately that person was not available. But I do look to have her speak on a future call. And Raquel, I know you know Kitty, so I would like to have Kitty be on a call in the future, and because Raquel works with Kitty on a pretty regular basis. So
We try.
yes.
And Wayne, I'll tell you, I mean, separate from these charges, so I'm working with Wayne and Kitty now on trying to donate. And, one of the issues that we're having truly is, so I'll just put it out there. General Mills did a recall on flour April 28th. We've gotten flour back from retailers and, they clear the shelf, right? And so they put flour like either in a big tote or in these banana boxes. And so, as we're getting them back to a warehouse, we want to donate, right? But I can't guarantee that there isn't recalled product mixed in there, right? And so, so then we're stuck with, we want to get this product to people that are hungry, but we don't want to put recalled product out in the marketplace. I know the, Feeding America is trying to work to feel like, can their local food banks do sorting? it's just frustrating. You know, the date labeling, you know, as you just said, is one aspect, but you know, all this work that has to happen to try to get people to try to get the food in the hands of people that need it. You know, it just I don't know. It just comes from a very frustrating place where you're trying to do the right thing, but you're trying to make it so that people aren't getting sick, and our consumers actually going to be looking at the code dates. Like, I don't know. So you know, these last two charges are pretty complex in lots of different ways. So that's all I'll say about that.
No, that was, yeah, you're spot on there. And you see it, I see it. So it is complex, especially when you get to an issue like if it's a recalled product or could potentially be recalled product. This particular charge is not even going to that level. On a previous call, I think I mentioned, you know, in the past, at least some of our food banks, Feeding America National Office and working with some of our food banks and some of our donors have been able to save product from going to landfill that was potentially a recalled product. But it's been very, very limited. But we did do one kind of pilot under FDA approval a while back. This is going back to maybe 2016 or 15. And there was product that was it was like a black bean veggie burger that was recalled. It was frozen, but it was missing. I believe the issue was it was the product was 93 truckloads of recalled frozen black bean, and it was due to an allergen not being declared on the label. So the donor as well as worked with FDA and Feeding America to come up with a process. And if you can see my screen here, this is a little bit of a highlight of it. But it's a very tedious process, to say the least, and rightly so, because it does involve recalled product that could be potentially harmful to allergy or people suffering with a peanut allergy. But we did come up with a protocol specific for this product. And you can see some of the things that were required here. We put very specific instructions on our donation platform. So if for any of the food banks that did receive this product or wanted to accept this product, they would have to go through this protocol, which included, sitting through a 20-minute webinar to explain why the product is being donated, and what needs to be done to this product, which in this case was the product needed to be relabeled. Not only did it have to be relabeled, but it had to be relabeled on the case. So it had some of this product was in cases, and then you had individual packages inside the boxes. So we had to label the individual boxes and then the actual individual unit. So there was a lot of stickers that had to go on this frozen product. The CEO of each food bank had to sign off on this. And then again, that 20-minute webinar kind of served as the training. So in order to do something like this, it requires a lot of time to be able to do this. The food bank then has to put in a lot of volunteer hours, so that it's a project. So they have to bring in either staff or volunteers to relabel this product, to sort and then relabel it, and then follow this process, to a T, so it can be distributed appropriately. Part of it also includes marking out the UPC code on each product. And then it is frozen product too. So we had to make sure that the whole process of relabeling it was being done either in a temperature controlled environment, or if it was not in a temperature controlled environment, we had to use time as a control, so the product did not start to thaw out. So a lot of work to save those 93 truckloads of product. So this type of thing does happen pretty frequently. This is an extreme example that I wanted to give because it did involve a class 1 recall type product. But we also have done this in the past pretty regularly on products that may be just missing an ingredient, but it's not an allergen. So I'm hopeful that we can have more dialogue with FDA on even if it's some kind of high level process on how we can potentially look for ways to make this easier, because it is, if you're having to relabel every unit of 93 truckloads of a product, that's hard. I mean, food banks are willing to do a lot to save product from going to landfill, but that's a lot of volunteer hours in order to do something like that. So, we've had examples. Let me see if I can pull this up. I've had examples of another one here. Here we go. This is another example of a waffle that was made actually in partnership with the manufacturer for our network. But there was a labeling error, and it had to, you can see it says classic waffles, sweet vanilla on the label. However, the ingredient list was incorrect. It actually said natural strawberry flavor instead of natural vanilla flavor. So this was an example of a donation that the food banks had to relabel to include essentially, correct the ingredient list. So as you can imagine, we were able to do that in this case, but it is a very kind of tedious process. And a lot of times I think we're seeing that manufacturers just don't want to take the time either to do it themselves. Sometimes they don't. A lot of times it's just easier for them to decide to destroy the product versus donate it. But these types of things come up. Sometimes it's the net weight that's wrong. I even had one once before where it's net weight that was in the wrong metric unit. I think it was maybe like I forget, but it wasn't to the FDA labeling guidelines, kind of to the T. So that was the issue. So I'm hopeful we can work with FDA to be able to find out, are there certain things that are acceptable? Do we need to follow FDA labeling guidance, Fair Packaging Label or Labeling Act, to a T, when it's, more of a quality issue or, so we'll see more to go on that. Okay, now I think Sean Michael, I'd like to kind of move on and have you talk about community fridges and what you found out through the city of Boston.
All right, I'll just share my screen real quick.
Yeah, are you able to do that, or do you need me to? I can make you a co-host.
I just hit share, so it might just ask you for approval.
Okay, great.
And then
actually it's working.
Perfect. All right, let me just hit set up. All right, hey everybody. I am a food and milk inspector out in Fitchburg, Mass, which is central Massachusetts. I had reached out to Worcester and Boston. I had spoke with Maria, so I won't touch much about Worcester. But when I reached out to Boston Community Refrigerators, or at least the Board of Health out there, it was more of a Boston Board of Health provides some kind of guidelines or some, I guess, consulting for the community refrigerators, but they're mostly neighborhood operated or individually operated. I did spend a day out in Boston. I visited these 5 refrigerators that I listed right here. I'll share the slides with you, Wayne, if you want, because there's a link here to all of the community refrigerators in the area, or at least in Massachusetts, and there's more than a dozen of them. There were several that were closed, and when I did visit them, I did kind of ask around for like the reasons of closure. The first one in Watertown was actually on the side of a market, and it was under new ownership, and they didn't want the refrigerator there. They had nothing to do with it. It was just their property, so they decided to end that. And then there was a second one I went to where it was the same situation, where it was the landlord was trying to revamp the property and didn't want the community fridge there that the tenants had started operating. But I point that out because there was no, from my understanding, no health code interference or Board of Health interference for those closures. But the ones that I did go see, they were actually quite clean, very tidy. I just made a little slide to say about the good things that I saw. Any prepackaged food that I saw, they did have the proper ingredients labels that I saw with the weight, the ingredients. They highlighted some of the major allergies that were prepared. When I did try to figure out who was providing those things, the Boston Board of Health in each part of the cities did tell me that they don't regulate that, but there are organizations like Project Bread that do help oversee and provide those products. Anytime I saw any produce in there, it was whole and uncut, which was great. Most of the refrigerators actually had mostly just fresh, uncut produce. Most of them had hand sanitizer, whether it was attached to the side of the refrigerator or the unit themselves. They all had ambient reading thermometers, and all temperatures read accurate with a few degrees plus or minus. Some of them actually had a QR code that you could scan with your phone and then notify the person inside if there was an issue, expired food, cleanliness of the equipment, if something was broken, if something didn't look right. And then a few of them even had trash cans, compost bins. Most of those were the ones directly in a neighborhood. The first one that I did visit out in Somerville was kind of at this weird intersection in front of a garage gas station kind of situation. And there was some debris around there, but there was no trash. So you could definitely tell that the trash cans were helpful in the neighborhoods that provided it. Just some pictures of what I observed inside, the proper labeling, the thermometer or the ambient thermometer. And then I was checking the temperature of each refrigerator as if I was on a real inspection, just to see how accurate everyone was. Based on the code that I follow through Massachusetts, which is the Mass Santa Code 590, and then the Federal Food Code, but we're still in 2013, I believe, with the merge of 17 and 22. So I try to use the outdoor cafe codes, the food code, and the food truck code to make my observations. Ideally, in my world, the outside refrigerators would be commercial grade refrigerators just to protect them from the element. And allow for that wear and tear of consistent opening and closing and storage. I got a little nervous with some of the wiring. Some of them had extension cords that just ran from the inside of the apartment. That gets me a little nervous just as if something happens in the middle of the night or someone wants to tamper with it. Like I said earlier, the trash can at that intersection was missing and there was litter around the area. It may not even be anything associated with the refrigerator, but I do believe it's just a good promotion to make sure that people are cleaning up after themselves. Most of our outdoor establishments in Massachusetts are required to have an overhead protection. I know there's no serving of food, at these refrigerators, but it would still be nice, in my opinion, to see some overhead protection. I do understand that these are all volunteer based and that there is no regulation, and then there's probably minimal safety issues for them. But to me, if there was ever a needs improvement, I would suggest that. And then just potential contamination is always in our guidelines, I guess, who's opening the refrigerators and whatnot. I believe that QR code was great. There was nothing to me or that pointed out to me that showed any contamination. I did speak to a couple of the residents who were actually using the refrigerators and they all had positive feedback. There was some food in there that didn't have English writing. I think I included some of that. You know, to me, it can be a concern, but making sure it's labeled and labeled at all was good to see. And then these are just some other pictures of the other parts of the refrigerators. Most of the food was canned goods. Like I said, the other parts of produce were all whole and uncut, but it seemed to be very well maintained, clean refrigerators and all that. I think it's important that the Board of Health are reaching out, at least knowing where these refrigerators are, even if they don't view them as their guidelines because of a liability issue. I think it's nice just to have that open line of communication in case these neighbors have concerns or questions regarding it, and providing a kind of like a consulted guidelines for the neighbors would be great. In my mind, it's better to know where these refrigerators are than not know. So trying to encourage the best behaviors, which it looks like Boston was doing. But those are pretty much my observations of those things.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Sean Michael?
Hi, I do actually. So we have a couple of those options here. But we post hours, we keep them closed and we post hours that they're in operation. And I know that's kind of hard to do, but in addition, we don't leave them unsupervised. They offer a lot more than this. They're kind of big mobile trucks, and we open those up certain days and times of the week. And we don't leave them supervised. So we have a little bit more control. Is that something that you were looking at, or what's your evaluation of that?
So I didn't see anything mobile like that. I can imagine having the operation hours on there being beneficial, possibly having even a lock on the outside between certain hours. Are your refrigerators community based or volunteer run, you said?
Yeah, they are community based, and they are volunteers.
And they're located directly in the neighborhood?
Well, yeah, we serve a university, so we're a big university, roughly a population of 50,000. So they're on, on the campus, although open up to the community.
Okay. I can imagine that being beneficial. I'm sure Maria and Julia might be able to provide some of their feedback of if that's ever worked or if they've used that practice. None of the people that I spoke to, the residents I spoke to, mentioned the cutoff time, and I didn't see anything posted.
Great. Anyone else? I put a link also in the chat. This is just I was at a food waste presentation a couple of weeks ago at a conference and learned about this organization called Feed the Fridge. They're a nonprofit 501c3. They operate in the Metro DC area. And essentially it's a slightly different model, but they actually pay local restaurants or work with certain restaurants in the metro area to provide fresh meals on a daily basis. So that was again, slightly different model, but I found it to be very interesting. And basically they say that, every day the meals are gone within a matter of hours. So they're not staying in there very long. So anyway, if you're interested, feel free to check out the website. All right, now I think we have Julia and Maria on from Woofridge. So welcome, Julia. I know Maria's been on for a little while listening. So we'd love to have you present and talk about Woofridge and how things are operated, how you manage your operation there in the Worcester area.
That sounds great, Wayne. Thank you so much.
And yeah, could you maybe just do a quick intro as well?
Sure. So I'm going to be driving the slides that we have for you all. So I'm going to get that set up if I can share screen. And Maria, do you want to introduce yourself while I'm figuring out my computer?
Hi, my name is Maria. I am an organizer for Worcester Community Fridges. We're based out of Worcester. We'll go into the presentation a little bit, but yeah, that's me.
And my name is Julia Rose Carpich. I'm also an organizer with the Worcester Community Fridges. I've been engaged since March of 2021, I think, so just over 2 years.
Great. Well, welcome and thank you both for joining and presenting today.
So Worcester Community Fridges, we currently have 4 free food fridges throughout the city of Worcester, soon to be 5 by this time next month, which is really exciting. Worcester also has a couple of different like little free pantries. So that model is also something that folks in our community are familiar with. But Worcester Community Fridges specifically focuses on organizing these outdoor refrigerators. They're placed in neighborhoods and like highly walkable areas. And each one of our fridges are open 24/7. And that there's different models throughout the country, but ours specifically are all open 24/7 right now. So how it all started. So Worcester Community Fridges, we believe that having daily access to fresh food is a human right. So like I mentioned, all of our fridges are open 24/7. And, as kind of the discussion was right before presenting, like quote unquote, unsupervised. We do this because we believe that having the least amount of barriers in the way of folks being able to access food is best. People know how to feed themselves. The community knows how to take care of themselves. So it's fully like a community run project. So how our, kind of story started, and it's probably, somewhat similar to other fridges around the country. We just put out a call to action to the Worcester community. In Worcester, we have a group called Worcester Mutual Aid, and we'll get into kind of like what mutual aid is specifically. But so we just put a call to action on the Worcester Mutual Aid site and just basically said, this is something that a couple of neighbors are interested in getting started. We had a property owner at a local pizza shop, fantastic pizza, they're wonderful. Within a week say, I'd love to have this in front of my restaurant. We chatted with the landlord, and within a month we had the first refrigerator opened, and that was opened in January of 2021. So Worcester County currently has 9 community fridges, with one more opening in Worcester at the beginning of June. I don't know how many folks in here are familiar with Central Mass, but just listed some of the towns, and the demographics of these towns are different. Worcester is more of a higher like populated city type area, and then the other towns that I listed are more suburban, smaller, still somewhat like larger populations, but definitely smaller than Worcester. So the one in Westboro, their community fridge is located inside of a YMCA. The other ones are some that are located outside of food pantries, some that are located outside of senior centers and different, community resource buildings. So it definitely varies where they're located, but all of them, besides the Westboro one, is open 24/7 and maintained by neighbors. So community fridges and mutual aid. How many folks, I guess a show of hands, or just kind of like shouting out like me, are have heard the term mutual aid or are engaged in some type of mutual aid projects in their communities? Yay. Cool. Yeah. So the concept of mutual aid, it's not a new thing. Sharing food with your neighbor predates colonialism. Food is a basic human right, and humans from like way before, regulations and all of these things have been able to feed themselves and share food with their neighbors safely. So mutual aid is not a new thing. It's all about community connection and care, and really organizing collectively to put systems of care in place where, other like social safety nets have kind of let us down. It asks what people need, and it delivers without expectations. So part of the work that we do is really getting into the community and building these really beautiful relationships with people who are engaged in, just kind of passing by the fridge or curious of what it is, or if they're filling the fridge or, shopping from the fridge, and really engaging them and asking them like, what are the needs of the community? Like, how can we, work together to kind of meet each other's needs? And that's really like at the core of this work. It's led by the community. It's for the community. There's, different community fridge models throughout the country, but ours specifically, we don't operate as a nonprofit. It really is kind of neighbors coming and going and taking care of, something really beautiful that in our communities. And we'll go into kind of how we organize to, organize within ourselves, but just kind of like the simplest way that this is, it's just community taking care of each other through these refrigerators. Mutual aid understands the system's role in unfair resource distribution, and really having conversations about, what can we do collectively to, there was some conversations earlier about like expiration dates and things like that. So us really having conversations about like looking at what makes food access inequitable in our communities and kind of building our guidelines and policies from there. And it empowers communities and benefits all of us. Our constant theme in our, kind of group chat and in the thing that we do, it's solidarity, not charity, right? This is class solidarity. This is community solidarity. This is not us, organizing from a charitable lens. This is really just us trying to make sure that our neighbors are fed. Did you want to go into the maintenance one? Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of maintenance, so this idea of collective responsibility also pulls through to how the fridges are maintained. So I think that sometimes folks will kind of come upon a fridge on a public sidewalk and kind of think that, oh, there must be a nonprofit structure around this that has someone who's paid to come by and maintain it and take care of it. And so we're always doing a lot of engaging with neighbors to say, no, this is your fridge. Like it's just as much kind of in your capacity to show up and to clean it and to fill it as it is in mine or anybody else in the community. Like it's a shared resource for all of our neighbors. And so the community fridge belongs to the community, which means that neighbors take responsibility in every step of maintaining the fridge. So filling it, cleaning it, addressing mechanical issues. One of the ways that we support and facilitate that is through some signage. So we have kind of large signs on each with some information about, what the fridge is, that the model is take what you need, leave what you can. Also, the food guidelines are posted on here. An invitation to clean, help keep this fridge clean. And then making sure that we have some information in different languages. And then also the link to the check-in form for the fridge. So we have a short video here, so I will play that and talk as it's playing. So the check-in forms came out of a partnership with WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, which is one of several universities in the Worcester area. So there were a team of students there who we partnered with to put together these fridge check-in forms. So you can see here, there are QR codes on each fridge, which pull up a form on Airtable, which actually was a model that we learned about from the Los Angeles Community Fridge Network. So anybody can pull this up on their phone if they have access to a phone and put in information, any comments. They can upload a photo about the fridge, a photo of what the fridge looks like when they're there. And so this is a way that anybody in the community can kind of share information. This data from this goes to two places. So I want to let the video finish. So you hit name optional and then submit. And the data from this goes onto our Discord server. So this is one of the places. So we have a group of about 170 people who are on the WooFridge Discord server. So those forms automatically pop up in a channel on the server so that the neighbors who are kind of interested in being more actively engaged in maintaining the fridge can see, if there's an issue or someone posts like, there's been a big spill of applesauce, it's a way for folks to signal like this fridge maybe needs some attention. It also goes to kind of a website that exists that the students built as well. And so you can kind of see any pieces of data from the survey over time as folks are completing the survey. So one of the pieces of data in there is what would you like to see more of at the fridge? So that's a way to kind of get a snapshot of what neighbors are looking for more of. So that exists as well. There are also neighbors who are not interested in, kind of the QR codes and the Discord and kind of being online in that way. And we really value their contributions as well. So there are plenty of folks in the Worcester community who organize on their own to help clean the fridges, either consistently or sporadically, anytime they have supplies or visiting the fridge. So we'll often put out calls to folks, or when we're at the fridge, just letting folks know that if they need cleaning supplies or want to keep some in their car for when they're visiting the fridge, that we are happy to connect them and to provide them with some supplies that they can use. Sorry, I see a chat coming in. We have not had any issues with the fake QR code scams. So we check these fairly regularly. We had the students who were doing them I don't want to overstate their skills, but there were some protections that they put in place around how information gets filtered and the ability to go in and edit entries as well. So I think we've been fortunate in that regard. They're at the fridges, so they're not particularly high profile codes as of yet. We're hoping at some point to put the direct links to the form on our website, so folks could also access the form that way if they don't have a QR code scanner. Engagement looks different for each person. So, but we really try to emphasize that all of the roles around the fridge, whether that's cleaning or shopping and making room for more food or filling the fridge, like all of those are equally valuable in the work of the fridge as a food sharing resource in the community. Maria, do you want to talk about what can go in the fridge?
Sure. So I won't go through all of these, but we do have pretty clear accepted food and unaccepted food, the largest unaccepted food items. And we try and keep it really short, just so we want more yeses than nos, obviously, but raw meat, expired items, and that kind of goes into like the moldy fruits, vegetables, and any like a moldy bread. And then anything that has been previously opened, and kind of like, the energy we put around it is like, don't put anything in this fridge that you either wouldn't eat yourself or wouldn't feed to your loved ones. Yeah, so that's kind of, pretty simple guidelines there.
And just to chime in, these are also the guidelines that we share with folks for when they're cleaning the fridge, that if they see raw meat or expired food items, to take those out and remove them. And we have a trash option at each fridge for that purpose.
Yep. So a couple of different, like avenues of how food gets into the fridge. So the first two are just the neighborly food sharing. That's the, kind of the day-to-day donations that we get. That's, I'm going grocery shopping. There's BOGO on an item. I have, a handful of items that I can share with my neighbors today. Folks organize within their workplace or their schools to do food drives. So one of the pictures in the neighborly food sharing collage there on the bottom right is from a food drive that was done in like a community resource fair, and folks just brought food, and we were able to distribute all of those beautiful items to different fridges in the city. We also do food rescues from local groceries or local food vendors in general, but and this kind of varies from like an organized, like we pick up from, a specific grocery store on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So there's a little consistency with it. And then we also get the random, like Target's freezers have shut down. We need you here in an hour. And we are lucky enough that we have a lot of engaged folks that are, kind of willing to, to do those like last minute, like hustles of getting food. So it definitely ranges. with like the food rescues that we get from food vendors. We also get donations from restaurant and farms. And this can look like restaurants consistently donating meals. We get meals from, gas stations, like little pre-made packages of somebody, everything that's within date, that they just are able to, they ordered extra or whatever it is, and they're bringing over. Last summer, a local farm reached out and said, like, we have so many blueberries that, blueberry season's just about done. Nobody's really interested in picking them anymore. If you can get here, like whatever you can take is, kind of good to go to the fridges. So we put that out there. We had some volunteers. That's my son right there. We went to go pick some blueberries and shared them with the community fridge. And that was a cool moment because it was cool to share that with, my son and the community and see like full circle how, if there weren't folks that were available to go, and if there wasn't this resource of a community fridge, it was just such a simple way of rescuing, this beautiful produce that's literally grown from the ground and just sharing it directly with people. Like there was no profit, there was none of that, right? It was just the simplest way of sharing, beautiful food from nature. Another type of donation that we get is from local food pantries. We don't qualify to receive donations from our local food bank specifically because, our kind of open access way of allowing people to feed themselves doesn't align with the food bank, but local pantries have been very generous with us, which is nice. So this was a donation that they just received, like an abundance of these like ready to eat meals that they weren't going to be able to distribute all of them. So they kind of called on us to help distribute those. And we were able to pick away at those for a while to keep in the dry section of our refrigerators. We are also really excited that we are able to share prepared and ready to eat meals. So there's two types of prepared meals that we accept: the homemade meal and meals from commercial kitchens. Both have the same regulations, or the same guidelines rather. Everything needs to be clearly labeled. There needs to be a date made, clearly labeling the allergens and the ingredients that are in these. And also in some type of like clear container or airtight container. That's just to kind of avoid like leaks and things like that in the fridge. So we have some delicious homemade meals that we get, and also from local commercial kitchens. And to make it a little bit easier for folks that love to cook, whether they're, again, the home chef or, the local restaurant owner that wants to, help avoid food waste or just help, put food back in, we've created these labels. And we also are happy, and we share these labels printed and ready to go, with folks that want to cook meals. And we also share containers. So this picture on the right is from a food rescue that we do weekly from a local food, it's essentially like a food court here in Worcester. And every Sunday night we go, because they're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. So we go every Sunday night. We provide them with pre-labeled containers. They either have the choice to fill it out right there, or our volunteers that are doing that pickup, they fill them out for them alongside the restaurant owner. And then that food goes directly into the refrigerators right after. So that was kind of our work around it. It was really important for us that we accepted homemade meals or ready to eat meals. And this was kind of the best way that we found fit, is just give folks containers and pre-labeled things. So all they have to do is put their delicious food in there and then bring it right to a fridge.
So in terms of kind of what community organizers, and that could be in Worcester, that could be in your local fridge network community, kind of what would be useful in thinking about some of the resources within this group and on the committee. So one of those is having transparent and open communication when regulations are passed that will impact our work. So I think that there can sometimes be a little bit of on edgeness when folks will come in and not necessarily be engaged with the fridge, but want to put in rules or guidelines without having that connection to the community. So I think that work to build connection, to have conversation, to be open and to be participating in the fridge network as a community member, and not just kind of interceding in a formal role, and thinking about what are the knowledge and skills and resources that you can share, and building that rapport and open communication and respect. If there's information that you all have access to about things that are happening more so at a national levels, that could be, we were just learning more about the Food Donation Improvement Act that was passed, which is a really exciting opportunity and would be amazing to share with some of our, local restaurants, local schools, folks, to get that word out so that they're not as worried about kind of this fear of liability with donating food that is still safe to eat and would otherwise go to waste. So if there are ways to package information so that it can be easily distributed by, folks who are just, working full-time neighbors who want to be engaged and don't have the time to pull that information out of a lengthy policy document, if there are ways to kind of package that information to get it out to fridge networks or to share with fridge networks or on social media, that would be really helpful. And then I think as well as you're thinking about your own communities and networks and who are the food access organizations in your community, remembering the kind of local community fridge systems, that sometimes those exist alongside of or apart from central food bank systems, that those are not always connected resources, and to also pay attention to those neighbor-led and community-led efforts as well. And just knowing that they are a part of your community and you are both like you can be a part of that community as a neighbor, but also kind of bringing the skills that you've developed in your respective roles to strengthen that network of fridges in your city. And so we have a variety of ways to stay connected. We are on Instagram, Facebook. You can shoot us an email at worcestercommunityfridges@gmail.com. We have a fiscal sponsor through Open Collective Foundation. So we have a project page there, and we post annual updates about what's going on there. So you're also welcome to check out that page and see what we're up to. I think right now we have an open fundraiser for CSAs, and you can check out what was happening this past year on our updates. Thank you, Janine.
Great. Well, I appreciate very great presentation. Appreciate it. We have about 7 minutes left in the call, so we can, if anybody has questions for Maria or Julia.
Yeah, I had one question for you. This is wonderful information. Thank you so much for sharing. As far as the homemade food, how do you handle that? Is it frozen? I didn't hear, is it frozen or is it both refrigerated and frozen? And do you maintain a list of those people that are actually making the food? If there was any kind of retracing or any need for that, do you know exactly where it comes from, or how does that work in a nutshell? Thank you.
Yes. So our when we were connecting with the community around kind of what would make sense for the community in terms of folks being able to share homemade meals safely with each other. And so we took a harm reduction approach, both to the fact that we need folks to be sharing food with each other if we're going to make sure that our neighbors are fed. Like, we need to be mobilizing folks to be cooking and sharing food with each other, informally or formally. And so thinking about what are the ways that we can give folks the tools and information and guidelines to do that safely. And so part of that is the labels and having those available, making containers available that have the clear top so that folks don't have to open it, right, to see what's inside. And so we accept both meals in the fridge and in the freezer, so frozen and non-frozen meals. And we do not kind of keep a list of who donates to the fridge and who doesn't donate to the fridge. Maria, is there anything you'd add to that?
No, that was great.
I had a quick question. So obviously you have a lot of volunteers that work with Woo Fridge. Do you have how do you really mobilize those? Is it mainly through social media? And about how many volunteers, or like kind of a volunteer base, do you have? About how many people roughly?
So we have, I think our Instagram is like 3,500 followers, and then Facebook group is similar size, like 3,200, or Discord is about 175. And there's some folks who are like, I don't want to be on any of this, who we just keep, are in touch with either via email or phone. So I would say at any time there's probably like a really core group of like 30 to 40 people who are, doing the kind of regular grocery store pickups, cleaning the fridges, who are tabling at events, and those folks rotate in and out just as life happens. And then more broadly, there's like this much larger network of folks who are either engaged in kind of getting information about the fridge, who are in the Facebook group and will just post like, hey, like I dropped off some food. You'll meet folks at the fridge who are like, for the past 2 years, whenever they go grocery shopping, they always get a few extra loaves of bread and bring them by their local community fridge. So there are a lot of folks in the community who we don't even know, who are mobilizing on their own and might be lightly engaged in social media or not. But we also use those online tools for more, to make sure that we have like more regular folks coming in to do some of the maintenance work as well.
Great. And then one other question. As far as the donations you get, what percentage would you say come from a licensed food service establishment, retail establishment, versus private individuals just donating produce or a meal of some sort, or packaged food for that matter, either from their fridge or pantry?
It's so difficult to like quantify that, right? Because food is kind of going in and out. But I would say we have, I don't even know at this point, we have a growing list somewhere of, just restaurants and grocery stores and bakeries that we collect from regularly. But I would say just kind of as, folks that are really engaged, like in the Discord and things like that, they were picking up maybe like 2 or 3 times a day. I want to say it leaned towards like about 2 times a day. And that's food that is coming from, food vendors. And then other than that, everything else is coming from, the neighborly donation of people either bringing just a handful of things, or people at, folks in schools or from their work saying, we've held this fundraiser or this food drive, and now we have like, 2 trucks worth of food going to the fridges. So the donations vary in size, but yeah, it's definitely hard to quantify how many are coming from licensed kitchens.
Okay. And then one other question, sorry. And then what would you say, how often are the fridges being replenished? Or how often are they, is the food staying in the fridge on average? Some fridges that other fridges networks that I've heard, the food that's in the fridge is gone by the end of the day. Sometimes you hear that. So then if that's the case, then is it the fridge being replenished in some way, shape, or form, whether that's from the retail stores that you're picking up from, or from private citizens or volunteers adding to that fridge? Is it pretty much on a daily basis? Just wanted to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's definitely on the daily basis for sure. And there's, more often than not, kind of like the slides that Sean Michael shared earlier of photos from the Boston fridges, you'll notice that they're empty a good amount of time as well. But I would say the food is not in there for longer than like a couple of hours at most. Definitely, by the end of the day, all of the food that was like put in the morning is gone. From an organizing perspective, kind of like I said, we are replenishing it and the donation amount kind of varies in size depending on where the food is coming from that day. But about 2 to 3 times a day that we know of that we're saying, hey, so-and-so just picked up the donation from Target and is going to these fridges. And that's pretty consistent. But, the inconsistent donations kind of being a neighbor that's saying, I have some extra money and I filled this fridge and it's, filled beautifully like right now. And all of that kind of varies.
New England is also, so the seasons matter. So summer, the fridges are filled a lot more often because folks have community gardens, they're growing their own tomato plants, there's some extra tomatoes. We have CSAs coming in. So summer is always a period of abundance for the fridges. And I think winter is usually when the fridges start to look, it's just harder to kind of get, especially fresh food donations in there. So they're not filled as frequently.
Great. That leads me to one other question. I know we're just about at time, but have you experienced any issues with the fridge operating in the extreme weather conditions, whether that's really, really hot days or really, really cold days, sub-zero?
Yes, so this is my favorite topic. So we actually had a team of WPI students who were gathering some recommendations for how to weatherize the fridge, and so put together a set of recommendations for thinking about installation and airflow. Our fridges are troopers by and large, right? They're not built to necessarily be outside when I think we had a cold front that was like -13 degrees. So the risk in cold weather is that the fridge is going to kind of say, look, I don't need to cool myself, right? Because it's so cold. And so it'll kind of stay, which usually isn't as much of an issue because it's so cold, right? It's below fridge temp. In the summer, as folks are opening the door, it can be difficult. I think the fact that the food in the fridge is never there for very long at all, longer than an hour, usually means we're not super concerned about food sitting out at an unsafe temperature for longer than, maybe 30 minutes in a fridge at any point in time, like 46 degrees. But it's something that we're paying attention to, and we're hoping to do some enclosure upgrades to help weatherize a little bit more.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know we're at time, so I don't want to take up everybody's time. Some people may have to jump to other meetings. So, but again, I'd like to thank everyone who presented today: Sean, Michael, Julia, and Maria as well. So, really, really appreciate it. Got a lot of good feedback on your presentation in the chat. So thank you all very much. And that's pretty much all I had, unless anybody's got one last question that wants to stay on a couple extra minutes. Okay, great. Well, thank you all again. And everybody have a great holiday weekend.
You too, Wayne. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.